Working men and working women of New Bedford, ye striking textile workers, and all of you others who, though not now on strike, have been on strike before this and will be on strike some other time. It has been the habit in this country and in England that when a strike is on, stars in the labour movement are invited to appear on the scene and entertain the strikers. Entertain them and keep them in good spirits with rosy promises and prophecies, funny anecdotes, bombastic recitations in prose and poetry. Stuff them full of rhetoric and wind, very much in the style that some generals do who, by means of bad whiskey, seek to keep up the courage of the soldiers whom they are otherwise unable to beguile. Such has been the habit in the past. To a great extent, it continues to be the habit in the present. It was so during the late miners' strike. It has been so to some extent here in New Bedford, and it is so everywhere, to the extent that ignorance of the social question predominates. To the extent, however, that socialism gets a footing among the working class, such false and puerile tactics are thrown aside. The socialist working men of New Bedford, on whose invitation I'm here, all those of us who are members of that class-conscious revolutionary international organization of the working class that throughout the world stands out today as the leading and most promiseful feature of the age. All such would consider it a crime on the part of the men, whom our organization sends forth to preach the gospel of labor, if they were to spend their platform time in tickling the workers. If, however, you have graduated from that primary department and have come here with the requisite earnestness, then you will not leave this hall without having, so to speak, caught firm hold of the cable of the labor movement. Then the last strike of this sort has been seen in New Bedford. Then the strikes that may follow will be as different from this as vigorous manhood is from toddling infancy. Then you will have entered upon that safe and sure path along which eternal disaster will not, as heretofore, mark your tracks. But New Bedford, Massachusetts, and the nation herself will successively fall into your hands with freedom as the crowning fruit of your efforts. 3 years ago, I was in your midst during another strike. The superficial observer who looks back to your attitude during that strike, who looks back to your attitude during the strikes that preceded that one, who now turns his eyes to your attitude in the present strike, and who discovers substantially no difference between your attitude now and then, might say, why, it is a waste of time to speak to such men. They learn nothing from experience. They will eternally fight the same hopeless battle, the battle to establish pure and simple organization of labor. Whence do wages come, and whence profits? What you now stand in need of, I more than of bread, is the knowledge of a few elemental principles of political economy and of sociology. Be not frightened at the words. It is only the capitalist professors who try to make them so difficult of understanding that the very mentioning of them is expected to throw the working man into a palpitation of the heart. The subjects are easy of understanding. The first point that a working man should be clear upon is this: what is the source of the wages he receives? What is the source of the profits his employer lives on? Who knows how many working men in this hall are typified by the working man in this dialogue? When, on payday, you reach out your horny, unwashed hand, it is empty. When you take it back again, your wages are on it. Hence the belief that the capitalist is the source of your living, that he is your bread giver, your supporter. Now that is an error, an optic illusion. If early in the morning you go on top of some house and look eastward, it will seem to you that the sun moves and that you are standing still. Indeed, that was at one time the general and accepted belief, but it was an error based upon an optic illusion. So long as that error prevailed, the sciences could hardly make any progress. Humanity virtually stood stock still, not until the illusion was discovered and the error overthrown, not until it was ascertained that things were just the other way, that the sun stood still, and that it was our planet that moved at a breakneck rate of speed, was any real progress possible. So likewise with this illusion about the source of wages. You cannot budge, you cannot move one step forward unless you discover that in this respect also, the fact is just the reverse of the appearance. That, not the capitalist, but the working man, is the source of the worker's living. that it is not the capitalist who supports the working man, but the working man who supports the capitalist. That it is not the capitalist who gives bread to the working man, but the working man who gives himself a dry crust and sumptuously stocks the table of the capitalist. This is a cardinal point in political economy, and this is the point I wish first of all to establish in your minds. Say that I own $100,000. Don't ask me where I got it. If you do, I would have to answer you in the language of all capitalists that such a question is un-American. You must not look into the source of this, my original accumulation. It is un-American to pry into such secrets. Presently I shall take you into my confidence. For the present I shall draw down the blinds and keep out your un-American curiosity. I have $100,000 and am a capitalist. Now I may not know much, no capitalist does, but I know a few things, and among them is a little plain arithmetic I take a pencil and put down on a sheet of paper. $100,000. Having determined that I shall need at least $5,000 a year to live with comfort, I divide the $100,000 by 5,000. The quotient is 20. My hair then begins to stand on end. The 20 tells me that if I pull $5,000 annually out of $100,000, these are exhausted during that term. At the beginning of the 21st year, I shall have nothing left. Heaven and earth, I would then have to go to work if I wanted to live. No capitalist relishes that thought. He will tell you and pay his politicians, professors, and political parsons to tell you that labor is honorable. He is perfectly willing to let you have that undivided honor and will do all he can that you may not be deprived of any part of it. But, as to himself, he has for work a constitutional aversion. The capitalist runs away from work like the man bitten by a mad dog runs away from water. I want to live without work on my $100,000 and yet keep my capital untouched. If you ask any farmer, he will tell you that if he invests in a Durham cow, she will yield him a supply of 16 quarts a day, but after some years the supply goes down, she will run dry, and then a new cow must be got. But I, the capitalist, aim at making my capital a sort of $100,000 cow, which I shall annually be able to milk $5,000 out of without her ever running dry. I want, in short, to perform the proverbially impossible feat of eating my cake and yet having it. How? I go to a broker. I say, Mr. Broker, I have $100,000. I want you to invest that for me. I don't tell him that I have a special liking for New Bedford Mill stock. I don't tell him I have a special fancy for railroad stock. I leave the choosing with him. The only direction I give him is to get the stock in such a corporation as will pay the highest dividend. Mr. Broker has a list of all of these corporations, your New Bedford corporations among them, to the extent that they may be listed. He makes the choice, say, of one of your mills right here in this town. I hire a vault in a safe deposit company and I put my stock into it. I lock it up, put the key in my pocket, and I go and have a good time. If it is too cold in the north, I go down to Florida. If it is too hot there, I go to the Adirondack Mountains. Occasionally, I take a spin across the Atlantic and run the gauntlet of all the gambling dens in Europe. I spend my time with fast horses and faster women. I never put my foot inside the factory that I hold stock in. I don't even come to the town in which it is located. And yet, lo and behold, a miracle takes place. Those of you versed in Bible lore surely have read or heard about the miracle that God performed when the Jews were in the desert and about to die of hunger. The Lord opened the skies and let manna come. But the Jews had to get up early in the morning before the sun rose. If they overslept themselves, the sun would melt the manna and they would have nothing to eat. They had to get up early and go out and stoop down and pick up the manna and put it in baskets and take it to their tents and eat it. With the appearance of the manna on earth, the miracle ended. But the miracles that happen in this capitalist system of production are so wonderful that those recorded in the Bible don't hold a candle to them. The Jews had to do some work, but I, stockholding capitalist, need do no work at all. I can turn night into day and day into night. I can lie flat on my back all day and all night. And every 3 months, my manna comes down to me in the shape of dividends. Finally, you may ask, no doubt the stockholder does no work and hence lives on the wealth we produce? No doubt these directors have a title that only emphasizes their idleness by a swindle, and consequently neither they are other than sponges on the working class. But did not your own illustration start with the supposition that the capitalist in question had $100,000? Is not his original capital entitled to some returns? This question opens an important one, and now I shall, as I promised you, take you into my confidence. I shall raise the curtain which I pulled down before the question, where did I get it? I shall now let you pry into my secret. Whence does this original capital or original accumulation come? Does it grow on the capitalist like hair on his face or nails on his fingers and toes? Does he secrete it as he secretes sweat from his body? Let me take one illustration of many. Before our present governor, the governor of New York was Levi Parsons Morton. The gentleman must be known to all of you. Besides having been governor of the Empire State, he was once vice president of the nation and also at one time our minister to France. Mr. Morton is a leading gentleman. He wears the best of broadcloth. His shirt bosom is of spotless white. His nails are trimmed by manicurists. He uses the elitist language. He has front pews in a number of churches. He is a pattern of morality, law and order, and he is a multimillionaire capitalist. How did he get his start millionaire award? Mr. Morton being a Republican, I shall refer you to a Republican journal, the New York Tribune, for the answer of this interesting question. The Tribune of the day after Mr. Morton's nomination for governor in 1894 gave his biography. There we are informed that Mr. Morton was born in New Hampshire of poor parents. He was industrious, he was clever, he was pushing, and he settled, a poor young man, in New York City, where in 1860, mark the date, he started a clothing establishment. Then, in rapid succession, we are informed that he failed and started a bank. A man may start almost any kind of a shop without a cent. If the landlord gave him credit for the rent and the brewer, the shoe manufacturer, the cigar manufacturer, etc., give him credit for the truck, he may start a saloon, a shoe shop, a cigar shop, etc., without any cash, do business and pay off his debt with the proceeds of his sales. But there is one shop that he cannot start in that way. That shop is the banking shop. For that he must have cash on hand. He can no more shave notes without money than he can shave whiskers without razors. Now then, the man who just previously stood up before a notary public and swore, "So help him God, he had no money to pay his creditors," immediately after, without having in the meantime married an heiress, has money enough to start a bank on. Where did he get it? Read the biographies of any of our founders of capitalist concerns by the torchlight of this biography, and you will find them all to be essentially the same, or suggestively silent upon the doings of our man during the period that he gathers his original accumulation. You'll find that original capital to be the child of fraudulent failures and fires, of high-handed crime of some sort or other, or of the sneaking crime of appropriating trust funds, etc. With such original capital, gotten by dint of such cleverness, push and industry as a weapon, the original capitalist proceeds to fleece the working class that has been less industrious, pushing and clever than he. If he consumes all his fleecings, his capital remains of its original size in his hands, unless some other gentleman of the road, gifted with greater industry, push and cleverness than he, comes around and relieves him of it. If he consume not the whole of his fleecings, his capital moves upward, millionward. The class struggle. The second point on which it is absolutely necessary that you be clear is the nature of your relation as working people to the capitalist class.